What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the Across the Cowboys podcast. I'm your host, Paul Ryan, and with me, as always, are the greatest co-hosts in the world, Mike the Pig Crumb and Brendan Fergie Smith. Gentlemen, how are you?
Doing good, my friend. Excited.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Pretty pumped.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mike, where can we find you on Twitter, sir?
At CD Piglet, guys. Nice and easy.
Brendan, how about you?
At Brendan_Smith26.
You can find me on Twitter at Paul_Ryan15. We are back with another episode of our fan favorite series, Cowboys Beef. Our guest tonight is a longtime Cowboys fan, Clubhouse Violator, co-host on the G-Bag Nation from 2 to 7 Monday through Friday, and on the pre- and post-game Cowboys show with Brian Broaddus. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Eric Chiofalo to the show. Eric, how are you?
What's up, boys? I'm fantastic. Great to be on with you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Glad to have you, man. Eric, where can we find you on Twitter, sir?
Quite simply, at Eric Chiofalo on Twitter. And I would love to welcome you into my very average account.
Yes, sir. All right, Eric, well, let's just go ahead and get after it, man. As someone who's living the dream and getting paid to talk about sports in the Dallas Cowboys, how did you become a Cowboys fan?
Yeah, well, I'm born and raised here, so and I was born in '94, so I didn't really get to live the glory days of the Cowboys. But one of my first Halloween costumes that I can remember was a Troy Aikman costume, the shut helmet and jersey and pants. It was the Bad Luck Blue jersey is what I had. Emmitt Smith was my favorite player. The older I've gotten, the more I actually would say probably my favorite Cowboy of all time would be Michael Irvin, just because what a presence he has. Old Piglet is saying yes to that. I guess that we're seeing eye to eye there, the playmakers. So, yeah, I mean, my dad is from Miami, so that was like Miami was always kind of my my AFC team. And once Emmitt Smith's career was done, I grew a big appreciation for a guy like Ricky Williams with the Dolphins because he obviously had the ties to Texas as well. But yeah, the Cowboys, man, they were always on the screen from day one for me, and I'll never forget watching Emmitt break that record. I'll never forget being at church that Sunday, and everything was a buzz of like, is today going to be the day? Is today going to be the day? And of course it was. It was spectacular. So, yeah, that's kind of my Cowboy history right there.
Yes, sir.
So if you could have any Cowboys job, non-GM, because we know they ain't letting you do that, what would it be?
Man, that's a great question. That is a great question. I think that I would, I mean, obviously, does the Will McClay role count because he's not technically the GM, even though he gets to do a lot of those things without maybe having to deal with some of the backlash when things go wrong. I think that would be a ton of fun. And if I committed myself, then of course, I mean, being the head coach of the Cowboys would be as cool as anything ever. So I don't know. I mean, do you guys ask your guests this quite a bit? I wonder what the most common answer is.
What was last week? I'm trying to think what our boy said last week. He didn't say Will McClay. See, my thing with Will McClay is, wouldn't you be nervous? Like, you got to follow Will McClay, who we haven't won, but he didn't get. That's Jerry's fault. Everything good, Will McClay, because he's a badass. So I'm not saying it's not, but like, you'd have to follow that. You'd have to come in. That would be pretty terrifying.
That's a good point. Big shoes to fill. I think actually, the more I think about it, if I could trade places with anyone in that organization, it would be John Steven. Just sit there. You're soaking everything in, and eventually you're going to get the keys to the car.
I like that. I like that.
Well, what is your biggest what if for the Cowboys?
Biggest what if for the Cowboys? What if they didn't completely S the bed just what now, a year and a half, 2 years ago, at home versus the Packers? What if they didn't give one of the most embarrassing performances in playoff history and just not show up on either side of the ball? Really one of the saddest and most disheartening and embarrassing losses that I can remember watching the Cowboys, and they had everything right there in front of them. They really did. And I know they had some flaws, They didn't really have any actual real linebackers. So could they have won the Super Bowl or something? Hey, maybe not. I think the other one that comes to mind, of course, is the Dez catch. If he catches that, what happens? I still think Aaron Rodgers probably has too much time and goes and finds a way to get it done. The one that is the most controversial that I have is, and this is how I felt in real time, 2016. You had a damn good football team, but when Romo got healthy, I felt like Romo should have gotten the job back.
All right. Yeah, that one, that's a what if right there, because Dak started slow, ended up playing really well in that game. But with a Romo, if he gets off to a fast start, yeah, that's interesting. I like that one.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Yeah, I mean, remember he comes in that Philadelphia meaningless game, right? And he marched it down the field and looked pretty dang good. And my whole argument the whole time was that you've never seen a rookie quarterback go out and win a Super Bowl. So if that's ultimately the goal, you have Dak's entire career and if Romo gets hurt again, which was certainly a possibility, every play we were kind of holding our breath. But okay, then Dak just comes right back onto the field. Like what's the deal here? And I know that whole locker room had basically, I don't want to say turned on Romo, but they were certainly embracing Dak. And so maybe with the human element of all that, maybe that wasn't really even on the table just based on how everybody was rallying around Dak. But I couldn't help myself but think, man, get a healthy Romo in there and let him go try sort of one last time.
It looks like your what if the Packers weren't a team in the NFL? Because you're just talking about all the bad things that's happened with them.
I hate the Packers.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You mentioned the playmaker Michael Irvin being your favorite play, but when you think of the Cowboys, who's the first play that comes to mind?
It's still Emmitt Smith. I mean, he was that dude. I mean, his like running for history, that the DVD of basically the Emmitt Smith documentary post him completing the rushing title. That was something that might be the thing that I've watched more than any other movie or documentary or anything. Like when I was younger, I just had that thing on replay. So Emmitt Smith is still probably that dude in terms of most synonymous, but I think the playmaker's impact on the organization really stands the test of time.
Are both of those heads on your Cowboys Mount Rushmore, or do you have a different four completely?
No, 100%, man. The triplets are on there, guaranteed. And then even though I didn't get to experience it, now knowing what I know about just how ahead of his time he was, I can't help but have Roger Staubach on there as well. Yeah. What he's done for the organization, a total legend, like athletic at the position in a way that you hadn't really seen at that point. And then just one thing that we miss here at the position is a guy who was always at his best in the biggest moments. His comebacks speak for themselves. He struck fear into opposing teams. So this is all me retroactively getting to know Roger over the years. And I say getting to know Roger, not personally, but just his career. There's no question you can have a Cowboys Mount Rushmore and not have him on there. And then the triplets. I mean, Aikman, unbelievable. Michael Irvin, Emmitt Smith. We've talked about him. I don't know how you go. I'm sure Brad Sham loves to sort of just put his boot in my tail from time to time. I'm sure maybe he's got. I'm sure there's somebody else that maybe he would have on there, but I don't know how you can not have the triplets and Roger Staubach.
That can I ask you something? I won't get off script too often, but I have to ask this. Does it irritate you, the younger fans? And I love Tony Romo and Dak Prescott. I'm not one of those dudes to either. But the younger fans that never really saw Aikman and look at his stats and think like, oh, he's a carried quarterback. Do you want to strangle them to death? Because sometimes I feel that way.
Yes, that 100%, man. That is a classic. You've got to watch the games type of scenario. And I mean, you don't win 3 Super Bowls by accident. You don't get carried to 3 Super Bowls. That just simply does not happen. At some point, if you are a quarterback who's winning Super Bowls, you made big time plays when it mattered. At some point, it was nut crunching time, and you can't just hand the ball off, and you can't have the perfect, most wide open, easy money target down the field. You have to be able to make plays, and Troy Aikman is the epitome of that. He could have had more gaudy numbers if they wanted to, or if he wanted to, but there was no reason to. He's like the prime example of you can't just simply look at the counting numbers and have them tell you the entire story. 100%. I would encourage anybody to go back and look at some of those playoff games and Super Bowls and watch Troy Aikman, and you will have a total different appreciation as opposed to think about it. Look at the numbers that Dak and Romo have, and they're awesome. Hey, dude, those jump off the page. Tell me one time where you felt like they were the difference in a playoff game.
And people forget that back then the Niners had a loaded there was no carrying. You couldn't be carried when you're going against a defense like the San Francisco 49ers had, like an offense like the Bills had. Like those teams were loaded. So you had to be loaded to have a fight with them. Sorry. See, I always do it. I rant. This is what happens.
I love it. No, it's an important conversation, Mike, and I'm glad we're having it.
They warned me. Don't get too off kilter. We got questions, Sorry.
No, I love it, man.
No, don't worry. I am not one of those younger generation fans that believe Troy Aikman didn't do anything. The only thing I'm annoyed is that he's the one signature I don't have of the triplets. I got Urban there, and I got Emmett up there. I do not have a Troy Aikman.
All that.
Huh? What'd you say? What'd you say?
Go.
Yeah, we'll go back. So we're talking about all these players who are just phenomenal. But who is the most overrated Cowboy, in your opinion?
Is this about the team right now?
No, just of all time.
All time.
Any.
Oh, of all time.
Or any.
Man. Okay. I would say right now for me, it would probably be Trayvon Diggs. Because when I think about guys who have been paid and he has not lived up to that at all, and I was against paying him from the beginning anyways, just because felt like he was just an interception merchant, and that's a volatile category. You don't just go out there and get double-digit interceptions year in, year out. That's just not how it works. So he had that one awesome year from that standpoint. That was great. But I think when you play defense, you need to have 11 dogs on the field that want to tackle people, want to play physically. And with him, like when somebody's running the ball, you're playing with 10 defenders. That's just what it is. I'm not paying somebody $20 million to intentionally miss George Kittle in a playoff game in one of the biggest plays of the game, right? Not to mention the interception that he dropped, which is supposed to be his bread and butter. So maybe he's not as overrated now because the injuries and people kind of know, I guess, what type of player he is. But that's the first guy that comes to mind for me in terms of overrated. I mean, you could even say at this point, based on the dollar making, like Dak is in that category, but I'm not going to go down that particular rabbit hole right now. So for now, I would say Trayvon Diggs. Most overrated Cowboy of all time? That's a good question. And this ticks people off, but like I feel like he was a really dang good player. And I'm not even going to say that he shouldn't be a Hall of Famer, but Jason Witten is a compiler.
Witten and Diggs. Now that's some answers right there. I love it. Not scared.
That hurts people's feelings in a big way. And I love Jason Witten and I love what he's meant to the team. But man, that dude hung on too long, and he was not an explosive downfield touchdown machine. Like Antonio Gates in a much shorter time period scored way more touchdowns than him. So again, good player, great player, but there's my answer. That's going to piss people off. Sorry.
All right, so who do you think is the most underrated Cowboy player of all time?
Most underrated Cowboy player of all time. I mean, I think DeMarco Murray is pretty underrated.
Oh wow, okay.
Good answer.
Why do you think that?
Well, I mean, everybody obviously, when you think about Cowboys running backs, well, you're either going to think about like a recent like Zeke, which Zeke was incredible. I mean, 2016, 2017 Zeke, like it's hard to argue that at all. Like he was unbelievable. And then of course you're thinking about Emmitt Smith, but DeMarco Murray was really, really freaking good for them. I mean, I think guys like Datwin and Dexter Coakley are underrated. I don't know that people really just think of them off the top of their head, but those were really dang good players. And the fact that Darren Woodson is not in the Hall of Fame, that's got to be the most egregious thing in terms of a conversation like this. I think Darren Woodson is probably the answer. The fact that he's not a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, Darren Woodson should have been in the Hall of Fame a lot. There's at least 5 safeties that couldn't touch Darren Woodson, and they're great safeties, and they still couldn't touch Darren Woodson. You kind of answered the Dak over underrated thing, so I'm going to flip it on you. We were talking about how you were against paying Trayvon Diggs. How do you feel about paying Deron Bland?
I'm interested in paying Deron Bland, one, because I'm interested in moving on from Trayvon Diggs at the end of the season. So when you look around the cornerback room, unless Kalen Carson steps up and has a much better year 2 than he did rookie year, which is certainly on the table. I mean, I'm not going to write him off, but it's obviously a big question. Now you have Savon Ravel as well. Again, a player that I really like, awesome value in the 3rd round. Don't want to ask too much of him this year, coming off an ACL, being a rookie. I like him in terms of a future piece, but otherwise, like your cornerback room right now is pretty dire, especially, if you're doing what I would like to do, which is move on from Trayvon Diggs. I like Deron Bland a lot just from he's the opposite of Trayvon Diggs from a mentality standpoint. Deron Bland is a dog. Deron Bland will stick his nose in there. And we saw him his rookie year with the ability to play nickel. And if you're playing nickel corner in the NFL, you got to be a special type of dude. We just saw it with Jordan Lewis. I hate that he's not here because that's physicality. That's the ability to cover a bunch of different types of wide receivers. You're on a weird island, 2-way goes all the time for these receivers. Plus, we're going to ask you to blitz. We're going to ask you to make plays in the backfield, and you got to get in the mix in the run game. I know Deron Bland doesn't want to be that guy. In terms of playing nickel, he's made that pretty clear. He wants to be a boundary guy. But just knowing that you have that ability of inside or outside flexibility and a guy who the type of competitor that he is. So, yes, I would be interested in paying Deron Bland. Now, the cornerback money has gone up a fair amount. Like this offseason, some guys were getting paid. Stingley, J.C. Horn, these guys get paid pretty big money. So, I don't necessarily want to reset the market with him. I'm not trying to do that. But if he would take the Diggs contract, which is like, what, $20 million a year, then, yeah, absolutely. I think Deron Bland is a guy that you want.
Yeah, I lived my whole life in Fresno. That's where I'm from, Fresno, California. I've lived here my whole life, and I was telling these guys, we got a special teams guy. Like, he's going to be on the team for 8 years. This did not see that. the pick 6 king, didn't see that coming. I thought we got a great special teamer, a leader, and he ended up, I hope we bring him back, hopefully.
Yeah, me too, man.
That cornerback room would be nothing, honestly. It's a whole bunch of what ifs. But so, like, you already did talk about how you believe Dak Prescott's kind of overrated. But how do you feel with him coming off another injury about him being your QB for the future? But I mean future, I mean the next 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, the next 4 years seems a little bit daunting. I'm just hoping he can get through this season healthy. I'm optimistic about the direction of the offense, and I know we'll probably get more into that here in a few minutes. But, yeah, I mean, listen, he's not Cooper Rush, so you're better today than you were than when you were ending the season last year. So the one thing you know about Dak is he is as committed to being as good as he possibly can be and wants to win. And, he's attacking the rehab process. We talk about a guy like Diggs. There's questions there. How much is he rehabbing? Jerry's calling him out. But there's no question with Dak Prescott, the type of effort and all the intangibles that go along with that. So I expect him to be as healthy as someone could be off the injuries that he's off of come week 1. I think we've seen evidence of that here just in the springtime. Hopefully we'll see even more of that once we get out to Oxnard here very soon. So I'm expecting him to at least be healthy in week 1. They've done hopefully enough on the offensive line from a coaching staff and personnel standpoint to be able to protect him. Hopefully they can run the ball to take some stuff off of his plate, but he didn't really look good. I mean, him and CeeDee Lamb, now the whole offense was bad last year just from the jump. And so maybe you just kind of you squash it and everybody's kind of got a clean slate because Dak and Lamb weren't on the same page. The whole offense was just weird. They didn't trust the offensive line, so they were scared to push the ball down the field, and Dak just did not look like himself. And hopefully we just chalk that up to McCarthy and the weirdness that was last year, and he can get back to being the best version of himself. I will lean that Dak is going to be a version of him that we're used to seeing and not what we saw for the 7 games before the injury last year. I think the biggest question, and because now you have a little bit more talent like Pickens and Lamb, that's huge. That is freaking huge. So as long as he can stay healthy, like he should be solid. He should be solid, and hopefully he will be taking the criticism that he's seen this offseason if he's glancing at quarterback rankings and seeing him as like the 17th or 18th best quarterback or whatever, in some cases in the low 20s. There's a lot of disrespect going on. When I talk about Dak being overrated, I'm only talking about him being the highest paid quarterback. But in terms of the way people are talking about him and the narrative around him right now, injury prone, which is fair, but having him as a 17 to 22 quarterback in the league right now, that probably pisses him off to no end. And chip on his shoulder, Lamb, Pickens, offensive line, new coaching staff. As long as he can stay healthy, man, he should have a decent year.
So do you think that injuries were to blame, or is it more McCarthy? What do you most blame for last season's bad year?
Well, I think the injuries are – that has to be the number one thing. Like when you're playing over half the season without your quarterback, like I would have to think that Dak and Lamb and just that particular chemistry would have figured itself out, and it wouldn't have been as stuck in the mud as it was through those first 7 games if they had the whole season together. So, yeah, the injuries, you lost Micah for 4 games. So you lose your quarterback and your best player defensively for a fair amount of the season. Lamb ends up missing time late with the shoulder stuff going on. So, yeah, and McCarthy deserves plenty of blame as well. It's hard. I was not really a huge fan of McCarthy, at least as an offensive mind and a play caller, some of the in-game decision-making, all that kind of stuff. The defense was a true disaster, even with Micah, though, to start the season. And it took a while for Zimmer and them to kind of get things figured out, though they did. Credit to Zimmer for being the one defensive coordinator who kind of was able to fluster Jaden Daniels to some extent last year. So, Mike McCarthy deserves plenty of the blame. Like, he had no imagination for doing anything that is supposed to be new age football offensively, living in the 30 years ago success that he had and trying to continue to run an offense that at this point is borderline extinct with the way that he was wanting to go about those things. So McCarthy deserves a ton of blame, but when you get that banged up, you're only going to be able to do so much winning anyways.
With how bad the offensive, the running was last year, would you put the most blame of that on McCarthy? Or do you think, would that be the offensive line or the play calling? What do you think the main issue was with our bad run game?
Yeah, I go to the coaching staff on that. I really do. When you have an offense that, again, is very predictable and is not really changing on a week-to-week basis based on the defense that's in front of them. Like, when you go play Detroit, Ben Johnson has 5 different ways to attack you in the run game. So what do you do defensively? Okay, I have something for that. Mike McCarthy this is what I do, and it doesn't matter who the opponent is. This is how I run the ball. There's no nuance. There's no eye candy. There's nothing that keeps the defense on their heels. Ben Johnson's like, okay, you run this front. Okay, then this is how we're going to block it this week, because he's got that ability. And some of that has to do with the personnel that he has, for sure. Some really good offensive linemen. But another part of that is he's a good enough coach and a creative enough coach to say that I'm not just going to be the guy that I.
Uh-oh. Did we lose Eric?
Got technical difficulties maybe for Eric here. Let's try to fill in this gap. It sounded like he was making some good points, Mike. What were your thoughts on what he was saying?
Yeah, well, see, there he is. We got him back.
Sorry about that.
That's
No
okay.
worries.
It happens to the best of us. We're on you, Brendan. Go ahead.
All right. Do you think Brian Schottenheimer is an upgrade over McCarthy, or do you think it's more going to be the same?
Well, I don't think it's going to be the same in terms of their style and the way that they're going to approach it. When Schottenheimer first got hired, I think pretty much all of us were like, wow, all right, that's not bringing in much confidence or excitement. You just found a guy who's in the building. You didn't have to really do much in the way of work, scour the landscape of available coaches, interview like crazy, cast a wide net. Like the Joneses don't have the stomach for that. So on the surface, it's like, okay, you're just going to get the guy who is probably the cheapest and is just right here already in your building. And here we go. This is another guy who loves old school football. But since he's been hired, you've gotten to really get a feel for the personality, which is a lot more infectious and a lot more likable than McCarthy. And then the other thing is most coaches are pretty stubborn, and they're kind of like what I described with McCarthy. This is what I do. We've seen an example of this with Dan Quinn, though, on the opposite side, where I didn't love the Dan Quinn hired as the defensive coordinator, thinking this is a guy who won with Hall of Fame talent with the Seahawks. He doesn't do much schematically other than just let his guys go play. It's like, what are we doing with Dan Quinn here? We don't have the Legion of Boom. We don't have Earl Thomas and Cam Chancellor and Richard Sherman and Bobby Wagner. What are we doing? But Dan Quinn, credit to him, he reinvented himself. And the defense that he had here in Dallas looked totally different schematically than what it did in Seattle or even Atlanta. But most coaches aren't really like that. So I was not initially giving Brian Schottenheimer the benefit of the doubt. And I'm just like, man, we're going to go back to this Jets offense that you were running, or I guess Seattle, which was pretty unimaginative and not very explosive and not scoring that many points. Like, is this really what we're going to do? But kudos to Schottenheimer, based on the coaching staff that he's built and based on the way that he's laid out what his vision is for the offense. This is a guy who clearly wants to advance things, and he wants to push the limits. He wants to evolve, and he wants to be a little bit more cutting edge. And so he's not doing the comfortable thing of this is what I've always done, and I'm going to go get all my friends that I've coached with in the past and been mediocre with. He went out and got guys that he's never worked with before. I love the Clayton Adams hire. I love the Connor Riley hire. Bringing the Oregon wide receivers coach, dipping into the college ranks a little bit, surrounding himself with guys that don't necessarily think the same way he does. And credit to Schottenheimer for looking in the mirror and being like, hey, I want all these things that these great offenses are doing now. I've never done them. So let me be the head coach and let me surround myself with guys who have been a part of these different things and bring these ideas in. And that's the thing I'm most excited about for this offense this year, and hopefully for years to come, is just a much more entertaining, a much more with the times, so to speak, offense from a schematic standpoint. And that's not something we've had. McCarthy, old school. Linehan, even Kellen Moore came from Linehan, and Jason Garrett, old school. Keeping it in the 90s. We're trying to do 90s things in 2020 and 2025. And it's like, come on, bro. We gotta like, you see all these other teams. We're watching, like, you're seeing these teams beat you. Look at the way Detroit beat you. Look at the way the Rams do things. Look at the way the Vikings do things offensively. Of course, the 49ers. Like, how can you not look at that and say, okay, they're playing a little bit of a different sport than us. Let's go try and do that. So the Cardinals, you bring in Clayton Adams from the Drew Petzing offense in Arizona, which has been pretty respected over the last couple of years, especially with the way they attack you on the ground. So I'm excited about where this thing's headed, and I certainly feel differently now about Schottenheimer than I did the day that they announced the hire.
Let me ask you this, Eric. Do you think this move going from McCarthy to Schottenheimer is going to be closer to when the Cowboys went from Bill Parcells to Wade Phillips, or from Wade Phillips to Jason Garrett?
Well, hopefully it's – I mean, I guess from a personality standpoint, to some extent, it is a little bit like, you know, it's a player's coach.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really good question, man. I'm going to have to think about that because I think
Chan
there are –
Gailey. It feels like going to Chan Gailey that 1 year, in my opinion. I think Shotty could be that type.
Yeah. I mean, I see some elements of a lot of these guys in Schottenheimer. I mean, the personality clearly seems like he's a player's coach, which, you know, Wade Phillips was, and everything. Too much of any of those personalities can end up being the death of you at some point.
Right.
So hopefully there's enough in the way of accountability and still digging into these dudes and not just letting them run all over you. Like Mike McDaniel in Miami right now with the Dolphins, like he's just getting ran all over by the players. You cannot have that. So I guess that's a fair fear to have about Schottenheimer at this point, but we'll see how he can sort of lay the hammer down a little bit as well, because you have to be able to do that.
Yeah,
I feel like you answered the next question I had in line, so I'm going to jump up in mine and ask, what position group concerns you the most on this team?
Well, I mean, I would just look at the defense in general, but especially the secondary right now. I mean, the secondary is something that brings concern. Now, I am confident that you're going to have a pretty good pass rush, so hopefully the pass rush can help mitigate some of the flaws in your secondary. I'm also concerned about your defensive tackle spot next to Osa. Like, Mozzie Smith is not that dude. I'm pretty much all but given up on Mozzie Smith being even a average NFL player. Can Jay Toya, your rookie 7th-round pick out of UCLA, be that guy? That's a lot to ask for a rookie 7th-round pick. But, man, somebody has to be able to stop the run. And they've done some things from on the edge to try and help. Guys like Peyton Turner coming in, drafting Marshawn Nealon. Those are guys on the edge that are more run defender edges than, say, pass rusher edges. And we'll see how they use Solomon Thomas a little bit as well. But, man, I think that one tech is a huge concern for me right now. And when I get to Oxnard, I'm going to be watching Jay Toya to see, like, man, hopefully he's at least better than Mozzie Smith is right now. But if I had to look at one area, I would say the secondary is pretty dire right now.
Agreed.
That's going to be a really popular answer throughout these shows, honestly, is going to be the secondary. Well, what is your are you excited for the offense, defense, or coaching staff?
Yeah, I would say I'm excited for the offense, and a lot of that does have to do with the coaching staff, kind of like I laid out. Like, I like what Schottenheimer's done. I think this is going to be a much more entertaining offense to watch. Hopefully it's not one of those flashy offenses that doesn't have the substance. We've seen Dak and Kellen Moore put up a lot of yards and numbers, and then but it's mostly versus bad teams back when the division really sucked, and you just run up the numbers and inflate them, and then you go up against a playoff type opponent and you don't look anything like yourself. You can't score 17 points. So hopefully, one, there's more substance to it in that they can actually there's not some huge gap between when they're at their best and then when they're at their worst. You know, I feel like that was always a huge problem. Like, yeah, man, we can go score a bunch of points. We could put up a 50 burger. We could put up 40 plus points versus these crappy teams. But when you go up against a real playoff quality opponent, what do? Oftentimes they crap the bed when it comes to Kellen Moore in that particular era. So I'm hopeful, and they had a pretty tough schedule this year. You're going to play some good defenses. can you still look like a respectable offense even when you're going up against a good quality defense, playoff type defense? I'm hopeful of that. But in terms of an entertainment value standpoint, I think, one, it's just going to be nice to see something new. This is going to look different. This isn't going to look like a Jason Garrett. This isn't going to look like a Mike McCarthy offense. It's going to be more new age than that. And so that's exciting. The George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb combination is obviously huge. Yeah. And I like what they've done on the offensive line. I mean, Tyler Smith, Cooper Beebe, Tyler Booker, that stuff's going to be really impressive. I'm optimistic that Tyler Guyton's going to be respectable. And a lot of that does have to do with the coaching staff as well. Like Connor Riley, Clayton Adams, those are two bona fide offensive line coaches that I feel really good about. So I'm pretty optimistic that the offense is going to be fun. I just hope that they can still show up versus the quality opponents that they have, and I don't think that's been something in the past that they've really been able to do.
Yeah, is Dak? Go ahead, Brandon.
I'll say, well, you already hit on this earlier about Mike McCarthy. If they can show that halftime adjustments, that will already be the biggest game changer I've seen in my lifetime of watching Cowboy football. Is that it's like, oh, hey, they're running this type of defense. We have no idea what's going on. In the second half, you go, oh, they're actually scheming against it now, and then you see where they're actually making moves for it. Instead of going, no, they're still gonna run hitches. They're running cover too, so the hitches are done. But we're gonna keep running it and see how it works.
Yeah, that's always been a frustrating thing, and some people say, or some coaches have said, halftime adjustments are overrated. But I think the best coaches are constantly seeing what's happening and adjusting to that. And the coaches that can see it from the sideline or from the booth and relay the information and, hey, let's pivot to this. That's a unique style of coach. And yeah, I'm definitely hopeful that these guys are much better at that than maybe what they had been in the past.
Is Dak Prescott your make or break player for 2025, or is it another player?
Well, I mean, I would say for pretty much every team, their quarterback is going to be their biggest thing. So outside of that, I'm looking at Tyler Guyton because he's, I think, the biggest question on the offensive line. And I'm optimistic about this offensive line. And I'm optimistic about Tyler Guyton. But if he's committing penalties at a ridiculous rate like he was last year, that's really going to hurt you. And then again, I'm looking at the corners opposite Bland. I'm looking at the defensive tackle next to Osa, who can stop the run. So I know that's not one. I guess if I had to put it on one, I would just put it on Guyton, because if Guyton is really good, then I think you are going to have a really good offense.
What was your favorite offseason move? Was it Pickens? I know you've said a lot about Pickens. If you could pick any of a favorite move of this offseason, what would be your move from Dallas?
Well, I mean, I really like the draft, and for this season alone, I love having George Pickens. Don't get me wrong. Now, I mean, if you're trading a third-round pick for kind of a one-year rental, and there's obviously some volatility involved in George Pickens, the personality and things, so that can go haywire. But yeah, I guess in a nutshell, for this year, the Pickens thing is probably the biggest needle mover. But I loved the selection of Tyler Booker. I love the Ezeraku selection in the second round, and I love the Ravel selection in the third round. But I think if you're going super big picture on this, you're looking at the draft, like the Booker stuff and the Ezeraku, Ravel, and I'm looking at Clayton Adams, Connor Riley. I think your offensive line coach is, outside of your head coach, might be the most important coach on your coaching staff. Connor Riley at K-State consistently put out really good offensive lines, good rushing attacks, even though he didn't have the Alabama and Georgia five-star, just unbelievable talents. And we see it firsthand with our guy, Cooper Beebe. So I think Connor Riley's a legit offensive line coach, and it's his first year in the NFL. So I know some people are a little bit skeptical, like college to NFL, okay. And maybe that ends up being a little bit more of a learning curve than I'm giving it credit for, but I like that addition. And then Clayton Adams, he's your offensive coordinator, but he's got an extensive offensive line background. So I think that's huge, and that is one of my biggest reasons for optimism.
The bar is set so low from last year, but what grade do you give this offseason?
I would give it a B, because I do like the coaching staff. I do like the way they drafted. I may not be crazy big picture about the George Pickens move, but I certainly understand why they did it. Like, outside of CeeDee Lamb, man, it was going to be really tough sledding. So I think that really changes the dynamic of your offense, and so that's a really nice piece to have for this year. But when you have as many holes as they do still, especially defensively, and I don't love giving all this credit to the coaching staff, but it's mostly offensively. Defensively, I like the White Cotton move on the defensive line, but I'm not crazy about the Eberflus move. Like, I don't think Eberflus is an upgrade over Mike Zimmer. I don't think Eberflus is some like outside the box thinker on defense, and he's going to be some like Steve Spagnuolo type guy who's dialing it up and keeping quarterbacks on their heels and confusing them and stuff. Like, he's just not that kind of guy. He's not really going to be blitzing and confusing these guys. So, not crazy about the Eberflus hire. So that's why, it's not like a B+ or an A. And then, like, you have one corner that we know is good in Deron Bland. So, and you still haven't gotten a defensive tackle. And again, maybe Jay Toya is, but it's like you have too many holes. So it's like you do the win now move to go get George Pickens, but is that really a win now move? I think it's really just a let's be competent move, because you had nothing outside of CeeDee Lamb. Your defense is a giant question. So I think it's a B.
Yeah, when you leave last season and it was you can't stop the run, you can't run the ball, and your offensive tackles can't pass block, and you go into the next season with we don't know if we could run the ball, we don't know if we could stop the run, and we don't know if our offensive tackles could block the pass. Little nervous.
Yeah.
I think above B for sure.
Right. C+ to a B. Your running back room, hopefully Jaden Blue's legit, but otherwise nobody scares you defensively.
All right, fill in the blank here, Eric. My relationship with the Cowboys is blank.
A little bit, I would say, depressing. Just, at some point you have to kind of emotionally detach, right? Because you can't be more invested in their winning than they themselves are. And it's pretty clear their priorities. There's a couple of things before straight up winning a Super Bowl. You know how hard it is in a league filled with parity to go this long without substantial postseason winning? Come on, dude. So at some point, you just kind of have to take a deep breath and understand what you're dealing with here.
All right, this is the last one before you get your beef on. Give us your Cowboys mantra for 2025.
Cowboy mantra for 2025. Is it fair for me to ask you guys what your mantras are? Or are we all mantra'd up right now? Does
Not just you, man. Just you.
I'm the only one.
You don't want to get me going on one.
No, you don't. Don't do it, Eric.
Last year, didn't last year's backfire in a big way on McCarthy? It ended up being something rooted, right? Rooted, which means effed in Australian or whatever. That was great. Man, that's a good question. The mantra needs to be
something about change something. 30 years, no NFC championship, like legitimately change something is where I would think to go.
Yeah. Who do we want to be?
Yes.
Who do we want to be?
I like that, man. That's really good. We got one here from Stephen White. Woke. I'm not sure what he means by that, but yeah, sure. Appreciate that, Stephen. All right, Eric, here we are with it. You have a chance to squash your beef. You have 2 to 5 minutes to squash any beef or air any grievances you have with any past or present player, coach, front office member, Cowboys content creator, or fan. Eric, squash your beef, sir.
Isn't all of our beef with the Joneses and the way they go about things? Ultimately, that's where this has to go. You can get mad at whatever fan or any individual player or any media member that you want to. Ultimately, the reason why Dak Prescott, the reason why Tony Romo don't have these substantial playoff moments, it's partially those individuals. You got to step up when it matters, but also it helps when you have an organization that's prioritizing winning and winning championships and not just trying to stay slightly above board, making the playoffs, and hopefully you get lucky and go on a run. Like, they're always just talking about, hey, man, you get to the playoffs and then anything can happen. No, good things happen to the teams that have actually invested the time, the energy, and the money into building something that has the substance to be able to withstand whatever a playoff run has to do. Because when you show up at home and you've got everything in front of you, and the Packers come to town as the youngest team in the NFL, and they absolutely freaking embarrass you, because why? Why does that happen? Does that happen by accident? No, it doesn't. It's because you haven't built a team that can actually stand up to a quality opponent. You haven't invested the type of money and time into putting an actual championship contending team around. You just pay Dak Prescott and say, hey, man, go be Pat Mahomes. Even though Pat Mahomes has a great organization who's actually awesome at acquiring talent, who can give him a top 5 defense, or give him one of the best coaches of the last quarter century in the sport. We're not doing that. We're half-assing coach hires. We're gonna have a night with Mike McCarthy, and we're not gonna talk to anybody else. We're just gonna do what makes us comfortable, and what makes us comfortable is collecting checks, collecting ratings, and getting to the playoffs. That's it. So all of our beef needs to be with the Joneses, is where it needs to be.
I love it,
man.
The littlest thing. Just pay a little bit of money to Bobby Wagner because he plays, instead of giving it to, we hope LVE is healthy for the second straight season for the first time ever. And then he goes out, and Marquise Bell, who I love, what an effort he gave. He's not a friggin' linebacker, and you had nobody else to play. But if you'd have paid Bobby Wagner a couple more $1 million, you would have had an all-pro, because he was an all-pro that season in Dan Quinn's system, that could have ran everything on your defense. That one move could have made a ton of difference, let alone do you pay other things. You're absolutely right.
It's right there in your own division right now, man. You're looking at the Eagles. Look how they do it. You think Jalen Hurts is like some Super Bowl champion, dynamite Teflon quarterback? No, but when he's got 2 number 1 wide receivers, a top-tier tight end, the best running back, and the best offensive line, and one of the best defenses in the league, all of a sudden, Jalen Hurts gets to hoist up a Lombardi. And that's because they will spend the money and they will invest in the team in that way. And they're not scared to maybe take a few steps back and not make the playoffs, not be very competitive for a year or two in order to catapult themselves into the championship stratosphere a couple of years later. I mean, they've been to the Super Bowl twice in the last 10 years-ish. I mean, or three times.
2017, and then 22 and 24 they won.
Yeah. So they've won 2 Super Bowls in the last roughly 10 years. They've been to 3, and you can't even sniff an NFC championship game. Like, cat's out of the bag now, dude. We all know what it takes if you actually want to win, and they don't. Like, that's just not their priority. So that's why we also all have to kind of, keep our emotions in check, because why should I want it more than you freaking want it, Jerry?
Fact. You feel better, Eric, getting that off your chest?
Man, I can't even tell you how therapeutic that was. Thank you for the opportunity.
I know you kind of do this for 5 hours a day. It feels like Monday through Friday, but sometimes, it hits different sometimes.
Amen.
Well, Eric, sir, thank you again so much for sharing your time, brother. Before we get you out of here, remind the people where they can find you on Twitter.
Yes, sir. At Eric Chiofalo on Twitter. Would love to interact with you, and looking forward to training camp and hopefully a fruitful season, boys.
Absolutely. Mike, let the people know, sir.
At CD Piglet.
Brendan.
At Brendan_Smith 26.
Guys, I'm Paul Ryan. You can find me on Twitter at Paul_Ryan15. We appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you guys next week.